There is a curious phenomenon that has been observed for centuries. People of higher intelligence tend to withdraw from society. They do not seek constant gatherings, endless chatter, or the noise of crowds. Instead, they find themselves drawn to solitude. This distance is not born of arrogance, nor from misanthropy, but from a profound inner necessity. Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote that the ability to endure solitude grows in direct proportion to the depth of one's mind. The greater the consciousness, the greater the distance from the noise of the masses. What others perceive as comfort, parties, chatter, trivial entertainment, quickly becomes suffocating for the thinker. But why is this so? Why do intelligent people find what others consider indispensable to be heavy, even unbearable? Why do they flourish in silence, while others wilt in it? To understand this, we must free ourselves from the widespread illusion that sociability automatically equals happiness. Modern culture glorifies extroversion as the ultimate proof of vitality. Those who prefer quiet are often seen as suspicious, reclusive, antisocial, or even broken. Yet in truth, this distance hides a rare form of clarity. Intelligent people perceive what remains invisible in the machinery of social interaction, the superficiality of exchanges, the masks people wear, the endless theater of roles. Most conversations are not driven by a pursuit of truth, but by a fear of boredom. They are not genuine encounters, but mutual anesthetics. Words are spoken not to understand, but to cover silence. And for someone who knows the value of silence, this becomes unbearable. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is a space where thought deepens, where clarity emerges. For many, this space is frightening because it confronts them with themselves. For the intelligent, silence is a home. Schopenhauer believed that the ability to enjoy solitude is proof of inner wealth. The shallow mind requires constant distraction to avoid collapsing into emptiness. The rich mind does not. Its own company is enough. This explains why intelligent people so often appear uninterested in social life. It is not because they despise others, but because what they find within themselves is more meaningful. Of course, this does not mean they reject human connection altogether. Even the sharpest mind is still human, still in need of companionship. But intelligent people are selective. They seek depth over breadth, authenticity over distraction. A single honest conversation can mean more to them than 100 hours of small talk. And here lies the tension. Society cannot understand this withdrawal. It interprets it as arrogance, coldness, or even a lack of basic humanity. In reality, it is a form of self-preservation, a way to protect the mind from drowning in triviality. Imagine owning a rare, delicate instrument that is easily damaged by noise. Would you not protect it, reserving its sound for spaces worthy of it? This is how intelligent people treat their minds. They guard them, refusing to let them be dulled by constant noise. Thus, in this first part, we have laid the foundation. The distance intelligent people maintain from society is not weakness, but strength. Not hostility, but necessity. But this brings us to the next question. How exactly do they experience society, and why does withdrawal feel like liberation rather than loneliness? When intelligent people enter social spaces, they often experience a strange mix of fatigue and detachment. It is not because they lack the ability to connect, but because they see the hidden mechanics at play beneath the surface. For most people, social life functions like a theater. Everyone plays a role, often without realizing it. You smile when expected, laugh when expected, speak in ways that offend no one. This performance is not malicious. It is necessary for groups to function. But for a mind that craves truth, it quickly becomes suffocating. Schopenhauer called this the noise of the world. By noise, he meant not only literal sound, but also the flood of shallow opinions, social conventions, and trivialities that scatter thought and drain energy. For the average person, this noise passes unnoticed. For the intelligent, it weighs heavily, like an invisible chain. Consider everyday small talk. Most conversations revolve around trivialities, weather, gossip, surface-level observations. To many, this is pleasant and comforting. It oils the gears of social connection. But for the thinker, these exchanges are exhausting. In 100 sentences, they may find not a single truth. Time slips away, energy dissolves, and nothing of substance remains. This is not arrogance. Withdrawal is often misinterpreted as pride or disdain, but in reality, it is about standards. The intelligent do not measure conversations by the laughter they create, but by the clarity they leave behind. If no clarity emerges, the exchange feels hollow. There is also the subtle demand for conformity. Within any social group, unspoken rules dominate. Be like us. Think like us. Act like us. Those who deviate too far are eyed with suspicion, sometimes even rejection. For most, this adjustment is automatic. For the intelligent, it feels like suffocation. They sense with painful accuracy how authenticity must be sacrificed simply to belong. This creates a haunting experience, inner estrangement. One sits at the table, nods, smiles, responds, but deep inside, one feels absent. The body is present, the spirit is not. You play the role, but you do not belong to it. Over time, this dissonance becomes unbearable. The question rises, why do I subject myself to this? At that point, retreat is no longer a luxury, but a necessity. Solitude becomes medicine. Reading, walking alone, writing, reflecting, these restore what constant interaction depletes. What others call isolation, the intelligent recognize as healing. Schopenhauer observed that the less one expects from others, the more one finds within oneself. Ordinary people chase distraction to avoid themselves. Intelligent people seek themselves because they discover within a wealth that no group could provide. This does not mean they reject all human bonds. They long for connection too, but not for any connection. They seek authenticity, a friendship rooted not in utility, but in understanding, a love where silence holds as much value as words. And it is precisely this rarity that makes their social lives appear sparse. The higher the standards for truth and authenticity, the fewer the encounters that satisfy them. That is why they seem to avoid people. But the truth is subtler. They do not avoid people. They avoid masks. Thus, this is how intelligent people experience society, as a space filled with noise, roles, and unspoken pressures, a space that drains rather than nourishes. It is no wonder, then, that they prefer distance. But another question arises. If intelligent people see social life as burdensome, why do so many others embrace it with such joy? Why does the crowd delight in the very noise that suffocates the thinker? The answer lies in a deep psychological difference, and it is here that we must turn next. To understand why intelligent people often withdraw from social life, we must look at the opposite side. Why do so many others crave it so intensely? Why does the crowd make them feel alive while it leaves the thinker drained and suffocated? The answer is not simple. It lies deep within the structure of human psychology. Schopenhauer described the ordinary person as poor within himself, not poor in money, but poor in spirit. His mind is filled with needs, with comparisons, with desires for external stimulation. Remove the constant buzz of activity, and he collapses into emptiness. And this emptiness is nothing less than the confrontation with himself, a confrontation he dreads above all else. Society, then, becomes his shield against the void. Surrounded by noise, by events, by constant companionship, he does not have to face the terrifying question, who am I when nobody is watching? For the intelligent, that very question is not a nightmare but a gateway. Alone, they do not fall apart. They expand. Their solitude is not a barren wasteland but a fertile garden. Their mind supplies its own richness, its own company. Thus, while the ordinary person seeks society to forget himself, the intelligent person seeks solitude to find himself. Another mechanism drives the masses into the crowd: social validation. Most people need to see themselves reflected in the eyes of others to feel real. Without constant affirmation, without recognition, they feel invisible. Their sense of identity hangs on approval. The intelligent see through this dependency. They recognize that a self built on external validation is not truly a self at all, but a fragile mask. They know that to anchor one's worth in the opinion of others is to live in perpetual exile from one's own essence. And that is why so many social rituals, ceremonies of display, endless boasting, subtle competitions strike them as hollow. Consider a gathering where each person lists accomplishments, shares polished stories, presents a curated image. To most, this feels joyful, like belonging. To the thinker, it feels theatrical, even painful. He sees the hunger for approval, the fear of being unseen, the desperate need to matter in the eyes of others. And once he sees this, he cannot unsee it. The magic is gone. This does not mean the intelligent are immune to loneliness. They too crave connection, friendship, intimacy. The difference lies here. They can bear the silence without rushing to fill it. They can endure emptiness without panicking. They know that boredom is not the enemy, it is the threshold of depth, and this creates a profound divide. For the many, solitude is a prison. For the intelligent, solitude is a sanctuary. The same condition, experienced in opposite ways. Each side misinterprets the other. The crowd looks at the solitary and says, "What a sad, lonely life." The solitary looks at the crowd and says, "What a noisy escape from yourselves." Here lies the paradox that fuels the tension. Both believe the other is missing life itself. The crowd thinks the intelligent are withdrawing from life. The intelligent think the crowd is running away from it. But what makes solitude powerful? How can a state that feels like weakness for the many become strength for the few? That is the question we must now explore. Solitude. For most people, the word itself carries the sting of punishment. It feels like exile, like a gray cell into which one is cast when life has gone wrong. For the intelligent person, however, solitude is not exile, but privilege. It is not emptiness, but abundance. It is the very condition of strength. Schopenhauer once observed that no one is truly alone if they are at peace with themselves. For the one who possesses inner richness, solitude is not a desert, but a continent. While the ordinary person hears nothing in silence but the echo of emptiness, the intelligent person hears the symphony of thought. Why does solitude hold such power? Because it grants three essential gifts. The first gift is clarity. In society, the mind is constantly pulled outward, toward opinions, judgments, comparisons, expectations. In solitude, the noise fades. One hears, perhaps for the first time, one's own voice. The thinker can separate what is truly his from what is only borrowed from the crowd. Solitude becomes a purification of thought. The second gift is creativity. No great idea has ever been born in constant noise. Philosophy, art, science, all of these flourish in stillness. Ideas are like seeds. They need silence to germinate. The intelligent know this instinctively. That is why social obligations often feel like theft to them, not merely inconvenient, but a robbery of the very time in which creation could occur. The third gift is freedom. In groups, we wear masks. We obey rules, we soften our truths, we bend ourselves to fit the frame. Alone, the mask falls. One can think without censorship, feel without restraint, exist without justification. This freedom is intoxicating, and for the intelligent, it is priceless. From the outside, such retreat is misunderstood. The crowd looks at the solitary and says, "Why do you shut yourself away? Why do you reject life?" But the truth is that the intelligent do not abandon life in solitude. They enter into it more deeply. Here lies the paradox. What feels like escape to the many feels like homecoming to the few. Yes, solitude has its risks. It can darken into isolation, into melancholy, into estrangement. But for the intelligent, it is not a cage into which they are thrown. It is a sanctuary they choose. Not fear, but sovereignty. Not weakness, but mastery. And this is the very strength that Schopenhauer admired, the ability to be enough for oneself, to not depend on constant distraction, to not crave validation as oxygen, to stand firmly in one's own presence. This independence is rare, and it explains why intelligent people so often seem detached from the endless social whirl. But this brings us to the final and most important question. What do they actually gain from this solitude? What treasures, invisible to the crowd, are harvested from distance and silence? That is what we will explore in the final part, the true fruits of solitude and why Schopenhauer believed they hold the key to freedom. If we follow Schopenhauer's path to its end, one truth becomes clear. The withdrawal of intelligent people from social life is not a weakness, but a transformation. It is not emptiness, but abundance. Solitude, when chosen, becomes the soil from which rare and powerful fruits grow. The first fruit is independence. The intelligent person does not live enslaved to the judgment of others. Freed from the constant need for approval, they create their own measure of worth. Instead of asking, "What will people think?" they ask, "Is this true? Is this meaningful? Is this essential?" This independence of mind is the foundation of genuine freedom. The second fruit is depth. While the crowd disperses its energy in chatter and distraction, the thinker gathers it inward, reading not to kill time, but to understand, reflecting not to impress, but to penetrate reality, speaking not to entertain, but to illuminate. This inward concentration creates an inner treasury no shallow social network could ever replace. The third fruit is authenticity. Constant conformity erodes the self. The more we bend to please, the more we forget who we are. But solitude restores authenticity. It strips away borrowed voices, false smiles, imposed masks. The intelligent learn to live as themselves, not as a performance. Authenticity is never easy. It disturbs, it provokes, but it is the only path to inner peace. The fourth fruit is creativity. Silence is the workshop of the mind. Great insights are not born in crowded rooms, but in quiet nights, in solitary walks, in long hours of reflection. Schopenhauer himself, like Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, and Kant, drew their most powerful thoughts not from the noise of banquets, but from the discipline of solitude. Creativity thrives where distraction dies. The fifth fruit is serenity. When you no longer depend on constant validation, a remarkable calm enters life. The fear of rejection, of invisibility, of not being enough, these fears dissolve. The intelligent recognize that worth is not a prize awarded by others, but a truth uncovered within. From this recognition grows a tranquility that is difficult to shake, no matter what storms may come. But make no mistake, intelligent people are not enemies of connection. They need friendship, love, companionship, just like anyone else. The difference is in the quality they seek. They want fewer bonds, but truer ones. Not noise, but authenticity. Not a crowd, but a circle. Small, genuine, unmasked. Thus, the social life of the intelligent is not absent. It is transformed. It does not disappear. It becomes selective. They trade the many for the few. They trade quantity for quality. And in doing so, they find what the masses often miss. Relationships that are real, where silence is not awkward, and where one can exist without pretense. Perhaps this is Schopenhauer's deepest lesson. Solitude is not the opposite of society, but its foundation. Only the person who can stand alone can truly stand with others. Only those who do not depend on the crowd can love without fear, give without demand, and belong without losing themselves. In the end, the real question is not why intelligent people avoid social life. The real question is, what might we all gain if we embraced more solitude ourselves? Maybe we would discover that we are far richer than we thought. Maybe we would learn that life does not begin in the noise of the crowd, but in the silence of the self, and that only from there can true community grow. So ask yourself, do you seek company to forget yourself or to find yourself? The answer may decide not only how you live, but how free you truly are.